In order to compete in the global economy today, it is critical to have the building blocks in place as a country. And then when you get those building blocks in place, you can compete in the global market. What are those building blocks? You have infrastructure. It all relies on your infrastructure and how you can get goods from one spot, from point A to point B, through the road system, through the ports, and how that all connects in. So that is a critical piece. On top of that, you need a very stable currency so people are confident that they can come to your country, put capital into the country, and they're able to count on that investment being safe. One that people don't spend a lot of time on is the political nature of the different countries and what politics can do to disrupt supply chains and place barriers into the supply chain. So you have to be confident when you're going into a country that you have a good solid political base and that you have something that's stable. When you combine these, you have a good building block set up and a good base to work off of, and then you can start looking at how you can compete in the global economy. The currency, the infrastructure, labor and automation. But okay, yeah, I can.
So if you want, you could just say, and also what you were going to say, and I can just cut it together like that.
Okay.
Okay.
And also there's the aspect of labor and automation. So if you have one or the other, or you have a combination of both, you have a good manufacturing base that you can work from to compete in the global economy. So once you have globalization and you know you can compete in the global environment, then you have to take a look at what makes a really effective supply chain. And what does make us an effective supply chain is a diversified supply chain, where you're not concentrated in one area. You can look at different locations and supply from different areas. So a good supply chain and an effective supply chain requires diversification of your portfolio of what you're investing in. And if it's a manufacturing base, manufacturing from multiple countries, gateways into your market, look at different gateways. So you have a different way to manufacture, get from point A to point B, and if an event happens, an unfortunate event or a man-made event, a natural event, if something does happen, you're able to adapt to it. And really, when you look at the flow of goods, it goes the path of least resistance, and it follows that path. So if there's something that gets in the way, the supply chain can adapt to it, and it's flexible, and it's able to flow the goods in a different manner. It might be a little bit more costly, but it still can flow and get into the markets that you want to hit. That's critical for our customers, that they get their goods onto the shelf, and if it's a little bit more costly, it's a little bit more costly, but they can still get it there and make the sale. Okay. When you see the supply chains of yesterday, and when you're from an American perspective, there was so much business concentrated in Los Angeles and Long Beach. There were supply chains that were 99% invested in that market and pushing cargo through that market. So when you look at that when you look at it now, you say, what would happen if something took place in that location? They would have a real tough time getting them through an event that was unfortunate or a natural event. So when you look at what happened historically and people concentrated in one area, diversifying, what we see today is a four-corner strategy where companies are looking at the P&W or the Pacific Northwest, the Pacific Southwest, the South Atlantic, and the Northeast, and pushing cargo through those different windows. And that way they can diversify, which is a much different approach than it was just 10 years ago. Okay. When we look at the impact of energy and over the years what has happened, I'll tell a quick story. We built ships to get to the market as fast as possible. So when you go to a market as quickly as possible, it's almost like a hockey stick. When you go faster, you burn that much more fuel. So we would go as fast as we could into the market and burn a lot of fuel to get to that market, because fuel really didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was not a significant cost item. Today, it is the leading indicator whether you're making money or not. Every little gallon of fuel is looked at and managed. So we have people sitting in India talking to our captains about accelerating at the wrong times, steady steaming we call it. We want to go at the same speed all the way through the supply chain. And that way we're not going up and down and getting to ports early and spending money where we don't need to spend money. If you get to the port early, your ship is sitting there, and that means you spent the money on the fuel to get to that point and to sit. And that makes absolutely no sense at all. You get to the port, and if the ship gets into the port and is worked right as quickly as possible, and then out of that port, you can really save a lot of fuel. And we manage every gallon of fuel right now because of the cost impact.
Okay.
When you look at the world today, China is the manufacturing base for the world. So we're going to, China is feeding into Africa, into Australia, into South America, into Europe, into North America. If you look at if you look at China today, and if something were to happen there, whether the politics got involved or something were to happen there, then your supply chain will need to be very, very adaptive and flexible. So it's important to work with customers and understand their sourcing locations, what kind of materials they need and where those materials are coming from, what kind of supplies come in from different countries, and then make sure you diversify that sourcing base as well as the manufacturing base. Then when you look at the gateways, you need a supply chain that can go different directions at any time. So you can go east, west, and get to the same market through different routings. So it's important that the customers understand that, and they look at these different routings and understand them, and that way they can get to the market, which is most important to them, getting the product on the shelf and making the sale. We have to make sure that they understand that and work through that. That was a little bit weak. Today when we're working with major customers, we look at the different gateways, and I spoke about Long Beach and Los Angeles being so critical to a lot of supply chains. There's a new port up in Canada now called Prince Rupert, which is quick from an ocean perspective from Asia to North America. You can get there and you have a good rail connection down into the Midwest. When you look at a risk factor of Long Beach and Los Angeles, which I spoke about earlier, and you have this possibility to diversify, this is a great alternative. Vancouver offers a great alternative as well, and you can get into those markets in the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley as quickly or faster, and you burn less fuel because you're going a shorter distance on the ocean. So it's good for the environment, it's good for your supply chain, and it's good for your business. If you're a customer looking at your supply chain and you go through the portfolio of different routings that you can take, and the different strategies that you can shoot for, it's important to have these different gateways. Wait a second, I'm getting off track. Leading companies are looking at their supply chain as a portfolio, where previously they looked just at a single event or a single routing. The leading companies today do a much better job of looking at their supply chain as a portfolio. I'm just going back to where I was. Yeah. Leading companies today are looking at their supply chain as more of. All right, I need to take. All right. The leading companies today view their supply chains as a portfolio, and when you're a portfolio manager, you look at the diversification of your supply chain. You look at different sourcing points, different gateways into your markets. So it's important as a portfolio manager and as a logistics manager to view the diversification of the supply chain. I was on the right track and I screwed up at the end. As a portfolio manager, you want to spread risk as much as possible. And when you look at your supply chain, you need to make sure you have multiple sourcing points and multiple gateways into the markets that you're trying to get at. So on an overall basis, the leading companies are... So a good supply chain manager is just like a portfolio manager. He's looking at his portfolio, he's trying to find out where's the risk, and then mitigating that to the best of his capability. When you look at leading companies that we deal with at Maersk Line, we try to implement different types of strategies with those companies. So we're going to them and providing them alternatives to what their supply chain looks like today. And from their perspective, it helps them adapt and be more flexible and have that agile supply chain that's critical for them in case there is something that takes place. The having all your eggs in one basket concept, that's archaic, and the sophisticated supply chains of today, they are much more flexible and they have the ability to counter any type of activity that might hinder having all your eggs in one basket type of supply chain. Okay. As the largest container line in the world, Maersk Line has a responsibility to make sure that we provide the services that will provide that flexibility and that creativity that is not in the market necessarily. As an example, we supply 53-foot containers, which are domestic American containers. They're built in China. We'll fill them with cargo, and then we'll bring them in through different gateways into the final markets. Some different thinking, some different ways to do things, and offer savings to the customer, but also a more nimble supply chain that they don't necessarily think about. So it's our responsibility as the largest container line in the world to have the services in place and have the thinking and the creativity to provide that type of network that they're looking for.
Okay, good.
From Maersk Line's perspective, having successful customers means we'll be successful. So when we look at the customers and how they're doing things and we're able to go in and help them adapt to different supply chains, we're successful, they're successful, and we take a lot of costs out of the system, making much more efficient supply chain than they had previously. If our customers succeed, Maersk Line succeeds. It's something that we look at every day. We'll go into a customer and we'll see how they're operating, and we have solutions that we can put in place, and we recommend those solutions. And when we see success and the customers using those solutions, it's fantastic. Everybody wins. Maersk Line wins, the customer wins, and you have a successful relationship that's long-standing. When a customer is able to implement a successful supply chain and Maersk Line is there providing this underlying services, it really creates a bond between Maersk Line and the customer. And that bond is long-lasting. It's not transactional. It's something where we're working together and we're making a much more efficient supply chain and an adaptive and a flexible supply chain. And you can really see it and you can feel it and you can live it. And it's a really strong bond, and the customers appreciate that type of approach from Maersk Line. When we're able to succeed with our customers and we're able to produce or provide a real flexible, adaptive supply chain, it creates a bond between Maersk Line and the customer that is long-lasting. It's not transactional. It's really, if you look at a pyramid, it's getting towards the top of that pyramid where you're going to be with that customer for a very long time. And it's something that they look for from Maersk Line, and if we have the services, and we do have the services out there to provide that network, they'll be with us forever. That's something Maersk Line strives for. When Maersk Line and the customer bond, it creates value. When you create value, there's a lot of opportunities out in the market. So you can create a lot of things. When you create that bond with a customer, it's a fantastic feeling for everybody, and it creates opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily have before. And these are big opportunities. If you're a 10 or 15% player with a customer and you create that bond, you can take that business to the next level, and you can get into a customer with a 40 or 50% share, which is great for everybody. We feel it's important, but it's also important for the customer that we have that network and we're able to provide that service, and they love it and they live it, and they're willing to give us the business at that level. When you create a bond with a customer, it goes to a whole new level of trust. And that bond that you have, that trust that you have, provides the ability to grow with that customer where you wouldn't necessarily have that ability. And when you're able to grow and look at new things, you come up with all kinds of different opportunities that didn't exist before because you're doing more business with them. And then they look to us for consulting, and they look at us for, hey, if we did this, can we do that? And we're there, and we see these opportunities where before we wouldn't be in that position. And then we can say, yeah, there's things that we can do. And it really creates a long-lasting relationship, which is critical for Maersk Line.